This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Hola, my name is Marta Hernandez. I am CEO and founder of MadeBOS, and you are listening to Popping the Bubble.
Hola, Marta. So great to have you here.
Thank you, Sandra.
Hola, yo soy 15 tortugas.
Martha and I met actually recently when I was putting on the event with Latina Geeks and SF New Tech. You were one of the entrepreneurs that demoed, and since then we've become friends on Facebook. I've found a little bit more out about you, and I just find your story so inspirational. It's been really fun to see your campaign, your crowdfunding campaign. So thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to see other Latina entrepreneurs. It's something that I didn't ever see coming up in my career. It's just great to have you here.
Thank you for having me here. And yeah, you mentioned, having a story, telling the story and inspiring more people to get it together and do something about, the dreams and aspirations that we have. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it would be great to start with your story because one of the things that I found out as we became better friends on Facebook is that you originally wanted to be a nopalera. I don't know if a lot of people know what a nopalera is, but tell us a little bit about that and how that guided your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you. So I was actually born in Oakland, but my family went back to a very small town in Michoacán, Mexico called Chavinda. And the town was so small that educational opportunities are very, very limited there. And growing up, there was a woman who sold nopales or cactus within the plaza, which is like the center of the pueblo. And then before going to her home, I assume, she would go through the main street and knock door to door, selling the rest of whatever she did not sell at the plaza. And she would say something like, no compra nopales, like really loud, knocking on doors.
And this is something that's very common in Latin American countries.
In Mexico, where you have
people that come around and try to sell you bread with panador.
Yes, leche, everything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that is what I wanted to do. Most of the women that I knew were at home, taking care of kids and family, and I saw that as my opportunity to be someone, right? And so I wanted to be a nopalera. And that's where I think this entrepreneurial spirit began. My aunts would send me outside the door with an actual bucket and would have me practice, right? And so you could hear them crack up about me going out. Here's this, I don't know, maybe 4-year-old, 5-year-old knocking and really screaming. And I remember they would be like, we can't hear you. And here I am again, no compra nopales. And then everyone would start laughing. So it was this environment where I felt like that was inspiring to me, right? I was inspiring myself to do that. And I began selling stuff. And whatever we had in our backyard, I would sell it. And to the point where when we came back to the States, I was about to start middle school. And that's when I began making just a lot of little things that I could sell for girls and hair and anything related to like beauty and hair. I was making it and selling it at family parties. So yeah, that's the story of the nopalera.
Wow, that's so cool. And fast forward to where you are today and MadeBOS. Tell us a little bit about what MadeBOS is about.
Thank you. So most definitely my heart is in supporting people achieving their dream and getting where they don't know that they could be. I've been in talent acquisition, talent management, and leadership development for the last 15 years, working with mostly retailers, food service, and hospitality. And one of the things that I've learned is that individuals have a difficult time growing and developing in companies because it's hard to understand what's available and difficult to know that you could potentially be that person, right, to fill that spot. And so from the company perspective, there is high turnover of people, especially in low wages, that they can keep inspired and they can't keep because there is no upward mobility or they don't know how to support them in developing their skill set. What we do is we go in and we sell our software to organizations that are having this problem. And we look at what are some of the positions that they have, not what's available, but essentially every position available, every position that at some point could be available. And we then look at people, and instead of measuring skill set or interest, we measure talent and whether or not there's a match between individuals' innate talents into what they could potentially do for that organization. We create this match, and then we give people an individualized development plan, and they can update it and follow it and manage it through their phone.
I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Because this is fascinating to me. What's the difference between measuring skill and measuring talent? Especially for someone who's low wage. I get that if you've immigrated to the U.S. and you're working and you're like, I was a lawyer, you have a skill. But if you're someone who's low wage because you're just getting started out or this is your only opportunity, how do you extract talent out of that?
Yeah. So, I think about it in sort of a poverty, perpetual poverty, right? It's generational poverty, people that have been in circles that lack social capital. And so if I've never seen something, it's very unlikely that I'm going to want to be that. You don't know what you do. You don't know. What we do through MadeBOS is we give people the opportunity to dream big, right? The I could be, something that I never thought I could be. And I see someone and I admire them, and oh my God, we have the same talents. That, oh my God, that awareness that I have what it takes, regardless if I speak the language, if I have a bachelor's degree, if I have certifications, that I could take that position at some point in my lifetime. And so I can acquire the skill sets. I have the natural talents. I can acquire the skill sets. So that's really essentially our goal, is to give people opportunity to see where they could be and then work on a plan on a daily basis to get there.
Is that similar to like a personality test, or how do you determine what your talents are? I kind of want to know myself.
Yeah. So there are a lot of companies out there
Me too.
There are a lot of companies out there that do that work, and they're incredibly sophisticated. There's a lot of back end that goes into the psychology of natural talents. We are taking a very simple approach and taking out the sophistication of that, because we're engaging people that on a regular basis, if you ask them, the question is, what are you good at? Instead of when, you are in front of people, have you developed people acumen? So those are, it's a very distinct individual that we're reaching in the work that we do. And so when we think of assessment, it's very self-driven. So those that take our assessment, they will see language on things they do every day. I love working with people. I love helping people, instead of something, completely different that you'll see on those most traditional assessments that are sophisticated and that are psychologically driven.
I've worked overseas a lot and with people that are in conflict zones. And one of the things I've learned is that the dream mechanism gets shut down when you're just trying to survive. People that immigrate are in a similar situation where they cannot risk their job. If you're working at fill in the blank company and you're just happy to have a job. How do we lift the mental barriers for those kind of things where I cannot risk, I do not want to rock the boat, I'd rather be invisible? How do we get that person to understand that the company has purchased the software and really wants to invest in them? And I know that isn't exactly your guys' job, but it is an important factor in what you're trying to do. What do you think?
Yeah. When we speak of immigrants, I've worked a lot with companies that are primarily driven by the immigrant population. And so I'm going to address first the professional that comes overseas and, or not overseas, right? But the professional that comes and doesn't find an opportunity where they can essentially use what they used to do, right? Or use the skill sets that they had. And so through MadeBOS, instead of focusing on whether or not you have your education and your certification, we will show that this person has had the experience. And sometimes when you go into a company, it's difficult for them to recognize it because there's no way to verify it. Essentially, we want to be there. We want to be at a place where we can, regardless of where you're at in the world, we can support in verifying your ability to be a global employee. And so that, I think it's what gets really exciting about coming from a community where you may have some sort of training or experience and want to make that and be applicable to the new job. Then the second part of the question is in relation to the employer. And so what I've seen in the employer side, right, perpetuating this inability to dream big and not rock the boat and be in this survival mode is that many employers that I have worked with have a traditional mentality that if you're really good at what you do, you must be happy. And so if Jose, Antonio, and Lupita, they're, and I'm using those names because these are typically people that work in low-wage jobs, do the job, show up every day, wash dishes, and do it well, that you must be happy because you show up happy, right, to work. And so that is not necessarily the fact that I'm content with my life. It's just that I need to keep my job, right?
Yes.
But in this environment, what we're seeing is that those entry-level positions now, more than ever, this is where you have most of the rotation, right? Back in the day, if you were a cashier, you could have a career as a cashier and you could pay rent as a cashier.
Yes.
Nowadays, there's absolutely no way. You are below poverty if you're working low wage in any industry.
Yeah.
So to be realistic, right? Employers, if you want to be a good employer and you want to keep your employees not happy, but winning in an economy that's competitive, right? And we're just not just within the U.S., then you need to support them. And something like MadeBOS is a solution to that.
Yeah, in some of the work that I've done with clients, we talk about like employees and the culture that goes into what goes on. And one of the questions I like to ask is, what's your next step in your career? What's your next promotion? When do you expect it? What's required for you to get there? It's an unfair question because I already know the answer most of the time in companies that are working on a cultural problem is they don't know. And I would imagine that Lupita and Jose and all these other people that are working in this spot are like, no, I'm just trying to keep my job. And so you're right. There's a two-way street where one, as a business, I have a guy that does the job. I have a lady that comes in every day. I'm not going to mess with that. I don't have a problem. Right. So why do I want to advance this person and now put them in a different spot where we don't know how they'll do? And then now I have to fill the old spot. I get that. And that's a very practical thing to worry about. And then again, how do I convince Lupita that it's okay to ask, because gosh, that is such a tough problem.
The good news is that now she won't have to ask, right?
Right.
Through MadeBOS, there will be opportunity for us to remove the bias from any managerial influence where they could potentially either tap Lupita on the shoulder or not, or Lupita come to them and say, hey, I would really like to grow. But rather, we essentially have data from Lupita's daily activity on the classes she's taking online, on what she's learning, on the events that she's attending, the type of events she's attending, the type of people she's connecting with in order, for them to be her mentors or advisors or influencers within the organization. So it's a laid back approach, but also supporting and switching the responsibility from that manager in growing and developing people to the actual employee to know that, it is my responsibility to grow and develop. Now, this is sort of like an 80-20 rule, is that we can't alleviate the fear that Lupita may have, right? Especially if we're getting into undocumented workers. That's something completely different. For the majority of employees that want to grow and that are leaving their companies because they want to grow, that's where we're going to have the most impact. And in fact, 7 out of every 10 hires, I'm just looking into the retail and hospitality, 7 out of every 10 hires leave the company within a year. That's thousands of dollars for a small shop. Millions, right? If you're talking already 5,000 to 10,000 employees. But over 50% of them leave because they don't see career pathing. They don't see an opportunity to grow and develop. And so we're seeing companies spending all this money in solutions for, bulk hiring or anything of like, we have all these positions open and now this new talent applicant tracking system is going to solve this problem because they have all these people that we can hire, versus really identifying the root cause of people leaving. And people are leaving because they need to pay their bills. 1. 2, they want to be developed. They want to win, like I said earlier, right? And so if you're able to show people that, hey, instead of leaving for 50 cents, right? You can stay here. And within 2 years, within 6 months, you could be earning $3 more. And you don't have to go and learn a different culture. And you don't have to switch everything you have right now going on in your life and figuring out if you are going to like the company or not. Because that is a risk. Every time you go somewhere else, it's a risk.
I love this about our show, by the way. I love hearing these stories about people trying to solve unsolvable problems. This is great.
The easy part of the sell is probably when you're talking to some of the people at the highest levels of the company, and they're seeing what this churn, how it's impacting their bottom line, because it's not inexpensive to continue to hire new people, and then you lose the talent that you've got. Yeah, I think it's just so compelling from that perspective, and also to be able to invest in their own employees when they see the cost of maybe giving them that $1 raise versus losing them altogether and having to bring somebody entirely new in.
Yeah, that and at the end of the day is I think that where we need to be, and this is where through the MadeBOS influence as we engage employers in workforce development and education, is that where we need to be is we need to be at a place where we can have an ecosystem of transferable talents, right? You start somewhere, but you know that that's not where you're going to end. And the problem right now with even college kids that they're graduating, 50% of them are going into careers that do not require a bachelor's degree. And this happens to be mostly kids of color, is that if they knew that right now this job is survivable, but as I'm working this retail, position that eventually I don't have anyone within my family that can support me in getting an accounting degree, an accounting job or an internship. But if I stay here, Safeway, let's just say, or Walmart, I know that essentially if I follow this plan, I'm going to end up in the accounting department. And so it really opens up opportunity for those who do not have that access, 1, and 2, for companies to see what they have, right? Because essentially when you have a really bottom heavy organization, it is very unlikely that you know what employees want, where they're going, what their, dreams are,
what they're capable of.
And what they're working on. And so our goal is to bring that transparency to the plate. The other thing, when we talk about millennials, I just did
Oh, I'm shaking my fist. No, go ahead.
I just did a seminar with tech company local here in San Francisco. And one of the things that we found out is that, this problem is not just in low wage jobs. It's mostly entry level, essentially, where you have individuals that don't really know how to support their growth and development. And so we asked a couple questions about, how long do you plan to stay with the company? And the majority was way less than 3 years.
Wow.
We asked about...
Wait, slow down and say that again. You invest all this money to hire. Maybe you're going through a recruiter and you're paying thousands of dollars to find these people. And
this is a tech company, yes.
And this is the actual employees self-reporting. I have no intention of staying in this job anywhere near 5 years.
Correct.
Wow.
I have, and the reason for that is I don't see an opportunity for me to grow here. The second one was I believe that I will be able to advance externally, that in order to grow, I need to go somewhere else.
Right.
And then third is that I don't really know anyone essentially internally that can support me and can mentor me to grow and develop internally.
Let me see if I can say back what you were saying, because I want to make sure that, one, the audience understands, because this is incredible. So you guys are talking about employees at a known tech company that are hiring people in entry to maybe a little bit above entry level things. These people have no expectation of staying. They don't feel that, and this is critical for you guys, there's a talent recognition system, and every company wants to recognize talent.
Correct.
I mean, that's what they're there for. And internally, there's not, from their perception, which is really what matters here, there's no mentoring. I don't know anybody 2-3 steps above.
Correct.
To help me develop a path and help them to see that I'm on a path. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. And
Wow.
that if I do have a development plan, which was, less than 10%, that it's very likely that I won't share it with my manager.
Well, I think that's also somewhat common to a Silicon Valley mentality and a Bay Area mentality, in that that upward mobility is gained a lot through job switching. When we see that, when we leave a job, you're able to get a higher title and better pay. So I wonder if that's just unique to where we are demographically, or if that's something that's a nationwide issue.
Yeah, that is a global problem, I would say. And, we've seen it with the low wage situation, but I think essentially anywhere you have a lot of activity, right? And you think, I always hear about the revolving door, but it's anywhere you have competition, right? Anywhere you have competition and there's entry level and there's opportunity to grow and develop, this is where the employer needs to really be aware about how they're going to support people in growing and developing. And it starts with showing them where they could be within the organization, rather than you have to go somewhere else to grow. Hey, we have an opportunity here for you, and this is what we're thinking. It's not going to happen tomorrow, right? But this is the plan. And so one of the things that most of those employees walked away with, and, got a lot of emails reiterating their feelings, is that they didn't understand that growing and developing was their responsibility. They didn't understand that opportunity was partly their responsibility. Why? Because they're not doing the daily activity to get there, right? If you're not recognizing yourself in the impact you're having within the organization and sharing that with upper management, that's on you. Number two, if you're not developing foresight into where you want to be because of what you like to do and what you want to earn, then that's on you. The company is supposed to add the resources, provide you with the space, have available opportunity, and essentially not be biased, right? But that's a completely different aspect. But
aren't you describing someone that's going to promote themselves externally anyhow? I mean, the company does own this. If they're going to invest in their employees, the employee has to believe that I've been part of inclusion training before, and I've never felt more excluded. You go through like, this is all on you. Like, okay, it's on me. And this is a specific example for me. When I worked at a tech-based company, they couldn't be bothered with my talent. Could not be bothered. It was all on me to figure everything out. And I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out externally. So what does the company owe that employee? I mean, they, use your product and everything, but there has to be investment where they say, yeah, you are standing out. We see that. How do you help that company get over that hurdle?
Yeah, I think we're speaking of two different things. There's investment, right? So the company provides the resources, meaning the opportunity for you to take classes, take certifications, go to conferences, do what you have to do to grow and develop. The company has to also be fair, okay? And fair is, I think, where we get to by removing all of this potential reasons why they're not promoting you and they're looking outside. And so by allowing the company to see one activity from the employee in getting to that next step, we remove that question on, or that statement that usually happens to be a part of the conversation in executive management, not ready. That person, not ready. That department, not ready. That team, not ready. And so it becomes this grass is greener on the other side conversation. And what we bring is transparency to say, you have people that are ready.
Yeah.
And willing.
Yes.
And so that investment, right? If the company has that right investment, we have the right methodology to show that.
To reveal it.
Correct. But it's ultimately the individual, the employee who's working towards that, right? I can't just wait and do my job bare minimum, because at the end of the day, most people do what is expected of you, right? To be promoted,
right?
You have to do a little more.
Yeah, so, the national number moves right in between 70 to 80% on employees that self-report being mostly disengaged at work. That's incredible.
That's huge.
Yeah. How do you get the employee to engage on your platform? Is this something that's on their cell phone where they're clicking off things off of the plan, or how does that interface?
So it is.
I'm asking all the questions. I'm sorry.
That's great. You're asking what I would ask.
So it's a platform where there's a lot of interaction and there are a lot of notifications, but essentially they have a plan, and that plan in itself has specific milestones that they're supposed to meet. And so one of the exciting pieces is that if you're grade level 1, right, and that means entry level, and grade 2 and 3 potentially could be your next step, is that you're seeing those grade level opportunities where you match in terms of talent that are immediately potentially available for you, so that within 6 months, we can actually see movement. Within a year, we can see movement of people progressing. The other thing, too, is there are companies that like to be dynamic and add people into teams and projects. And so with this, there's a layer of skill set where they actually add their skills based on projects they've worked on or what they've done in the past, certifications, education, etc. And so we can take all of that into account. But the fact that is the individual that is dynamically adding that information there and following this plan and celebrating each other when some of these milestones are met is where we find most exciting, because it's driven by them. Most of our competitors, when you think about individual development plans, it's a non-electronic process. It's usually paper-driven. The second piece about what's interesting about individual development plans is that they're driven by the employer, right? It's where they think you fit based on the position you have now, Myers-Briggs, and they do all kinds of other things, right, to identify the next person. That's succession planning. And then eventually the employee finds out, oh, I'm being considered for, one day to become. We're staying away from that. We want the employee to be at the forefront of identifying where they could be, so that management can then take that information and be strategic about where they grow and develop people.
I have so many questions.
Keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm asking because I'm fascinated by this, and it's important work, because if you have a team and you're like, we'd like to bring somebody in. I'm a military guy, and they constantly mentor people. So it's like, you need to get published. You need to do these. So they're always working on that while they do the mission. And corporate America kind of struggles with that a little bit, where they force themselves to develop. So how do companies deal with someone who is emerging, and the boss is like, that guy's going to come take my job. I'm going to stonewall this person. Like, how do you create the transparency or the opaqueness to say, this is an interesting person. We want to bring them in. We're working on this project. And you look at the talent instead of the name or the position. And I know you guys have an answer for this. And you're shaking your head, and I can't wait to hear it.
So the good news about being in talent acquisition for so long and working with organizations and restructuring their selection process has informed a lot of what MadeBOS is now. I'll give you examples. So when a position becomes open, even for a company where the culture is to hire from within, you have two big problems. I think one is apathy. So employees thinking that because the company has this investment, that they will hire me, they will promote me because I've been here for 3, 4, 5, 7 years, especially if it's a unionized environment, right? We're going through seniority. Showing the data on who is best fit is all about being factual, and facts come in the form of potentially reports. So the very first thing that I used to do with the companies that I came in and supported in restructuring processes, because they were having difficulty developing people or promoting them or diversifying, right, their upper management, was looking at the way in which they were selecting people, right? And so if you have 3 senior managers or 2 managers making selection by interviewing someone, it is purely our interpretation and opinion of this person's ability to do the job. 70% of people that get promoted because of the perception that they are great. Okay? And so what we do is, let's level down this reality based on what you've done and what you are doing. Right? Not necessarily the fact that I like sort of a LinkedIn. I was in these positions, but here's what I'm doing to get there. You know, when I think about this manager who may not be too happy with me being a shiny star, okay? This manager may have some influence, but the reality is that at the end of day is performance, right? And so that comes across with, if I'm a cashier, my ATS, that comes across if I'm a store manager, my sales numbers, again, my activity. And so that doesn't go directly to the manager. That goes directly to upper management in a way that they've never seen data before. So in the selection of individuals, when they're being promoted, they're looking at data that they've never really seen before.
That's fascinating. Well, how important are mentors in this process for employees?
Yeah, we have an aspect, we call it influencers. We think that obviously having a mentor could be your peer, but we believe that in order to advance, you need people that have already been there, done that, that support that growth. So as an example, I join, right? I'm Lupita. I'm a cashier. I join. I'm a MadeBOS user, and I am a cashier at Walmart, let's just say. You, Sandra, are my manager, but you are too busy. Like, the job you have is ridiculous. So for you to say, I'm going to mentor 300 of my employees is like unheard of. Like, it's impossible.
Right.
So even though there are all these systems to support you in working with me one-on-one, you probably meet with me one-on-one once a month, or you meet me with me one-on-one as I am checking out customers. That's the reality, right? On fast-paced environments. This happens in manufacturing. This happens in hospitality is the reality. But there might be someone within the company that has a different role, right? And this may be a marketing analyst. And the marketing analyst gets pinned because I am a student and I am pursuing marketing. And I updated that on my profile. And I made a presentation and I did a report and I updated that on my profile. And so now this marketing analyst can see me, that I am at store blah, 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 and I'm from the same community. So then this marketing analyst is going to say, oh my God, Marta or Lupita, you should go to this event, or you should try to apply for this internal, temporary position. I'm removing your limited access as my manager, right? And limited time as my manager to opening an opportunity for other people that may be available within my organization to show me the way. Right. And it doesn't have to be someone I report directly to.
Is there an external element to what you do? Let's say that Pete, wants to work at either Apple or Microsoft.
Will be there.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I have this portfolio through MadeBOS. I've done this work. And then, Apple's looking for me, and it's easier, because a resume is one thing, but it's just a shot in the dark. You just don't know. So is there an external element to this coming?
That's where we're headed. Part of what we see is, there will be a reduction in force, obviously in retail, in manufacturing. There's going to be a different type of manufacturing. So skill sets will change. The requirement of the skill set will change. And so our goal is to prepare people for the jobs of the future. So we won't be able to get there if we are only showing people opportunity from within. And so essentially our goal would be that we're onboarding companies that are in line with our model, with our vision and our mission to prepare people to take that next step. And so how the company benefits is that we provide them an ecosystem of entry level and growth pathing to then exit if there's no more growth for them internally. A lot of what we see in organizations is that, people stay at a job and their productivity goes down because they're not invested anymore, right? That 70% you spoke of, it's an example of that. 1, and 2, that a skill set is you reach peak at a certain time, right? And so I always explain to people in the talent acquisition world that having 10 years of experience as a cashier technically is like 6 months of experience as a cashier, right? Now, the component of people and emotional intelligence that you gain by being at the job on a regular basis, you probably saw every iteration of the potential problem with the customer or with your boss or with your colleague. But at the end of the day, technically, it's about the same. Like there's just a certain amount of time that you can get really good at what you do. And so if we all understand that, we can make a better world by giving people that are entry level jobs that pay entry level, get them to that next step. Essentially, there's always progression, and that if you're someone that is poor, that your only option is to work in low wage jobs.
Now, is part of MadeBOS partnerships with online providers of coursework, and so you're providing those education services?
That's where we want to be. Right now, we're looking only at what the employer offers in terms of growth and development. But our goal is to say, hey, in meeting people where they're at, because that's another component of what we do, is that essentially the company invests a certain amount of money and they look at this one size fits all. So they say like every receiver, right, in a warehousing environment will have the following training, which includes looking at incoming information from vendors to forklift driver certification. But maybe the 3 people that we have that could do that job, maybe they're not fully bilingual. Maybe they don't even know Microsoft. Maybe they don't even understand how to use Excel. And so how they're going to report or print those reports. So the company may offer this next level, go and take your certification, but they're missing the basic components. And so that's where we come in. We know, this person doesn't have that yet. Let's get them there first. So I think that's where a lot of the linkage to external resources, local resources, English classes, certifications, etc., online. If you have a hectic, if you're poor, chances are you have very little time. I've been there, so I know what that looks like and what that feels like. And so living in survival mode is more expensive than anyone can think of. So it's how do we make it easy for people to grow and develop in a way that is impactful.
I can just see this even being so huge, even outside of an employer-employee relationship, and just for people that are motivated and that want to figure out how to become a web developer or a mobile developer. What are the steps that I need to take? So is that part of the plan as well, to have a direct-to-consumer model?
Yes. So we do B2B first, and then essentially once we develop our AI and machine learning and all that stuff.
Tell us about the AI.
Well, essentially what I do right now with companies is a small piece of that, right? But I'm working. I'm the brain of the environment. I'm the AI right now. But once we have millions of instances, that's where AI really comes in, and we'll be able to make predictions based on the data that comes through our software.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are some of the key talents you think that are going to be out there? Because the job market is changing. Forklift driving is becoming obsolete, as far as for a human doing it. So what are the things that you foresee? Yeah.
So it's important to differentiate, right? Most organizations use core competency. Like, what is the core competency that someone's going to need to do this job? Well, core competency essentially entails natural talent and then skill, right? Natural talent is what I was born with. It's the fact that I can do this many different jobs and I would be really good at them, right? But essentially, if you're not exposed to those jobs, you probably only have seen 2 of those jobs and you're really good at them. And so you become that. As an example, I am really good with people. I have strong people acumen. I have great intuition. I have strong command. I can influence people easily. So based on that, I was really good in sales. And so as I was selling product, I got recruited by the organization that offered me a position in recruiting. Right? And so I kind of ended up there by luck, because of a natural talent, right? If you're really good at that and you show that, then somebody's going to recognize that. Well, there are millions of people that are not as lucky as I am, and that someone may not be able to recognize that. So we want to recognize that having strong people acumen combined with command, combined with influence, combined with leadership, those core components can open up opportunity to this many positions, right? Or this many careers. In the jobs, as an example, some of the ones that are becoming obsolete, we want to look at what are the most common denominator talents for the jobs of the future, and what are some of the jobs right now that are utilizing those same, common denominators, so that we can then build on the skill.
Yeah, and I can imagine as someone that's taking the assessment and and kind of honing in on what those talents are, it would be so empowering to know, wow, this is really the opportunity that I can strive for. That
yes.
I can be a VP of sales someday. So that's really cool.
Yes.
Speaking of talents, I know you have a talent that's not related necessarily to business, but tell us a little bit about your singing.
Yeah. Well, that is business, right? Like I monetize.
So you do monetize. Oh, yeah. I didn't realize. So good for you.
That was an entire part of this strategy. As someone who is a single mom, Latina, I support my parents. It's difficult to say I'm just going to be an entrepreneur. I needed to make a lot of money enough to save and be able to make this transition. And so, focused, and within a span of 3 years, I was able to land an opportunity in executive management, which paid me really well, and then diversified my income. I have 2 homes, 1 home. I rented a room. I started doing gigs, singing. And so I'm to have a presence and for people to really see me as an artist, I need to have an album. I recorded an album. I started sharing my songs because I'm a writer. And so now I'm making a little money with, local groups singing my songs. And so all of that. Right. Oh, and then training and going out and doing, gigs for organizations that I've trained and developed for. And so all of that combined is not paying what I used to earn, right? Being employed, but is allowing me to have a survival model where I can not worry about having to have a job right now because I'm self-funded.
You're an entrepreneur, solopreneur.
Exactly. And that's what it is, right? And so this is not for everyone. This job, right? Being an entrepreneur is not for everyone because God knows every morning that I wake up and I thank him for giving me the thought that I could do this is what drives me. But having an entire ecosystem that allows me to dream big and gives me the leeway to breathe, music is one of them, right? When I'm frustrated, when I'm super stressed, I'll upload a little video of me singing and then people loving it. And so that feeds this ego, right? And everybody has ego. You have to have ego, a little bit of ego to be a leader, but it feeds I'm making an impact. Somebody's liking what I'm doing. I'm going to keep going. Music has been critical in this process in really strategizing the transitioning out of my regular day job, of feeling like I'm creating and mobilizing people. I was able to reach within 3 months over 11,000 followers on on Instagram. And then on Facebook, another 5,000-6,000 people. And so that led me to be successful with my fundraising campaign because I had all these people that believed in me and that had heard of me and that knew that I was singing and doing this other thing. So I had sort of the fan base, and it happened because of music.
And just for the audience, you are beaming right now talking about this. This is straight from the heart, and I love hearing about it. You had a fundraising campaign, and obviously it was successful. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So part of learning this part of this 3-year strategy plan was I need to learn what Silicon Valley is. I need to learn about building a tech company, and I knew very little. I need to be at the forefront developing and supporting the implementation of tech systems. And so I made sure of that through my job, but I also started coming to events and learning about people and making connections. So really building my my environment in that way. And so I also learned that for people like me, it was very difficult to get funded, especially with just an idea. And so for me to get the product, I needed money, but I only had enough to survive and not have the job. So it was sort of like this chicken and the egg. And through mentors, the Latino Startup Alliance, Jesse Martinez introduced me to Ken Nguyen, who's actually the lead founder of Republic. And that's a crowdfund platform. And when they met me, I think they just saw the energy and the passion and they wanted to know more where I was at. So I shared everything. At the time, I was barely thinking about leaving the job. And I think that week when I left my job is when shit got real, really real.
Yes.
Yeah, it
emails
does.
came in, people, what do you need? Do you need space? Do you need, business cards, advisors? I mean, it just got really real. Deck, got people to review it, started talking to potential team members. And so I rallied a team. I rallied over almost 10 advisors, high-level advisors. And so that entire process led me to be ready to be able to be onboarded in a company, in an organization like Republic, and show my community that this is what I'm up for, and this is what I'm doing, and I would love your support, your investment actually. And so I didn't realize how much work it was going to be. But the day that we went live, right, the campaign went live, because with crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, you can't announce you're doing it. You can only talk to your very close team and plan it out. But announcement comes the day you actually go live. And so that day was Friday, Cinco de Mayo. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be big. People are going to be like, oh my God, this Latina is doing this thing. And so I'm thinking we're going to be like, that day we're going to go at 100%. Yeah. We had an article go out, and that night we were like 3 investors. And that weekend I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? I started panicking and high anxiety. And so I just, I kept reminding myself. And this is something that I think every human being should know about themselves, that no matter what, I control the situation. No matter what, I get up. No matter what, I follow up. No matter what, I keep going. And so I kept reminding myself of that. Every day I would wake up, I saw where we were at, and then just keep moving forward. And I had some advisors that, weren't really fans of this process, and were like, well, and so, this wasn't the right thing. And I, in the back of my head, and again, communicating to them that I made a decision and we were in it.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could do right now was push really hard. And we needed everybody to do the same. We ended at 220-something% of goal.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. And majority Latina investors. And that's 70% of my investors Latinos. First-time investors, almost 90%.
So great.
First-time investors. Never in their life they've ever invested. And yeah, majority Latina.
That is amazing.
So to show that there is hunger, there is a space for us to rally up and show up and support each other is one. And the second, because in the Latino community, there's this saying that we're like crabs, right? That you pull each other down. So I've checked people when they say those things, because I don't believe that that's necessarily true anymore. I believe that there's a lot more collaboration and support, and it is up to us to stop that stereotype. So I felt like this was a great example of that, of support and belief and faith that this could be big, and I want to be a part of that. So, it was quite an interesting and dynamic and experience for sure.
That's amazing. That's so great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. And it's just awesome to what you've done.
Yeah, and I'm excited just to see your excitement and your passion. And, just if anybody was investing in you, they should see how excited you are for them to be part of this process. So it's really neat. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Martha. It's been an awesome conversation. We are so excited to see your growth and see what comes of MadeBOS, and anything that we can do to support you. We're here for you.
How do we find you on social media? Tell us how to learn more about MadeBOS.
Yeah. So it's simply, you can go into the MadeBOS.com website. You can also look into Facebook, Marta Hernandez. Instagram is Marta Soledad. That's my artist name, Sol. But I post a lot. It's a very dynamic social media, Twitter as well, Marta Soledad Sol, because I want people to see that, culture doesn't necessarily, if you're all about your culture and feeling proud about it, doesn't mean that you can't be an excellent professional. Mm-hmm. And so everywhere I go, I carry that I'm, Mexicana from Michoacan, and that I'm very proud of that, and that we're moving forward with this new environment where we've not been participants. Yeah. So it's time.
You're an absolute inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Un placer. Gracias.